Coming up tonight, the Bulldogs prove why they are the #1 team in the nation.
The Gamecocks women's soccer team's undefeated season came to an end last week.
A Gamecock basketball legend is now a champion. Who is it and what have they won tonight?
These stories and more tonight on Palmetto State Sports.
From the Blue Ridge Mountains and through the Midlands down to the coast, there's plenty of sports highlights and moments here in South Carolina. There's only one place where you'll catch all the action. This is Palmetto State Sports.
Welcome into Palmetto State Sports. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm Courtney Hollmon. Thanks for joining us tonight.
On Saturday, the Gamecocks faced the #1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs and suffered a loss with a final score of 48-7, scoring their only touchdown with 53 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
The Gamecocks, who were down 6 key defensive players due to injuries in last week's game, struggled on both sides of the ball as they could not contain the Bulldogs' offense. Tight end Brock Bowers having 5 catches and 2 touchdowns, as well as 10 more Bulldog players rushing for a total of 212 yards.
The Bulldogs' defense also created a challenge among the Gamecock offense as quarterback Spencer Rattler threw 2 interceptions and was 13 of 25 for 118 yards. In a press conference after the game, Spencer Rattler talked about his performance and what he and the team need to do to be better. Here's what he had to say.
It's a lot of things. I mean, it's not just one thing. Personally, I have to limit the turnovers, the interceptions, especially because we'll be throwing the ball a lot. So, you got to limit that. I felt like we ran the ball decent today when we were on a roll. It's just we got to clean up everything, I think, and just getting a better flow and not get ourselves in bad situations and not getting these third and longs and this and that. We just got to make it easier for ourselves, and we're not right now.
Moving on to the upstate, the Clemson Tigers also went up against the Bulldogs on Saturday. That is, the Bulldogs of Louisiana Tech. Although the Tigers were off to a slow start in the beginning, they ended up pulling out a win over the Bulldogs with a final score of 48-20.
The breakout star in this game against the Bulldogs for the Clemson Tigers was sophomore running back Will Shipley, who's had an impressive start for the Tigers so far this season. On Saturday, Shipley ran in for 2 touchdowns along with a career-high 139 yards in rushing. According to Clemson, Shipley is the first Tiger to have multiple touchdowns in the first 3 games since 1950. Other key players in the Tigers' win over the Bulldogs include linebacker Jermaine Trotter Jr., cornerback Malcolm Green, and quarterback DJ Uiagalelei.
The Tigers jump back into ACC play next week as they take on the #19 ranked Wake Forest.
Moving on to the pitch, Gamecocks women's soccer finally suffered a defeat as they fell to the 11th ranked Crimson Tide squad in Tuscaloosa. They allowed 2 goals and were not able to score 1 against the stout Alabama defense. A problem the team faced in this match was the great attacking force of the Crimson Tide.
That offense was featured 2 goals by Felicia Knox and Riley Parker. Alabama's attack also put up 20 shots, 7 of which were a goal, compared to the Gamecocks only being able to muster 6 shots throughout the game.
Despite the loss, the Gamecocks will look to bounce back tomorrow night as they take on the Georgia Bulldogs in Athens at 7 p.m.
Continuing on to the pitch, the Chanticleer men's soccer team faced a tall task tonight as they take on the 10th ranked Charlotte 49ers in Queen City. Coastal Carolina's men's soccer team has been the epitome of average this far with 2 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses on the season. However, they have played some very tough opponents and been contenders in every match.
The team's leading goal scorer, Alvaro Garcia Pascual, will look for his 5th goal tonight, and the Chanticleers will likely need some production from him if they look to score the big upset tonight in Charlotte at 7 p.m. And we've seen Charlotte become a pretty formidable soccer team in recent years.
Charlotte has become a pretty good soccer team. I'm interested to see how they match up against Charlotte.
Definitely. Coming up, SGTV News 4 sports reporter Connor Fisher will give us a glimpse at the sports world outside the Palmetto State.
Welcome back to Palmetto State Sports. Here's the Pro Sports Rundown. Week 2 of the NFL season started last week with Kansas City winning on Thursday Night Football, and it was capped off with a rare doubleheader of Monday Night Football action in which the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles established themselves as elite teams. During Week 2, the 0-1 Carolina Panthers traveled north to take on the 1-0 New York Giants. While star running back Christian McCaffrey had his first 100-yard-plus rushing performance since 2019 with 102 yards for the day, Panthers quarterback Baker Mayfield completed less than half of his passes for 145 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions in a lackluster performance. In a game without a lot of offense from either side, the Panthers lost for the second straight week on a game-winning field goal, this time from Giants kicker Graham Gano with 3 minutes left in the game. The final score, Giants 19, Panthers 16. The Panthers have now lost 9 straight games going back to last season, the longest such streak in the league. This week, the now 0-2 Panthers have their first matchup with a divisional rival when the 1-1 New Orleans Saints come into town. Kickoff is at 1 p.m. on Fox. In basketball news, this past Sunday, the Las Vegas Aces hoisted the WNBA championship trophy after defeating the Connecticut Sun 3-1 in the finals. This marks the second time the Aces have made it to the finals since 2020 and their first ever WNBA championship. Gamecock legend A'ja Wilson has become a leader not just for the Aces, but for the entire league, winning her second career MVP and first career Defensive Player of the Year award since being drafted first overall by the Aces in 2018. The teams hosted a championship parade down the Las Vegas Strip yesterday that was well attended and well celebrated by all. Finally, on the baseball diamond, the Atlanta Braves have successfully clinched a spot in the MLB playoffs, joining the Dodgers and rival Mets of the National League and the Astros of the American League as teams in the playoffs so far. The Braves took care of business against the Phillies and Nationals this past week, winning 5 straight before losing earlier today to the Nationals 3-2. Tomorrow they go back to Philadelphia for the next 4 games. Max Fried will be on the mound for Atlanta at Citizens Bank Park. First pitch is at 7:15 p.m. Coming up next, an MLB player is hitting his way into baseball immortality with the season coming to a close. Who is it and whose record's about to be broken after this?
Welcome back. I'm Colleen Sholtis. History was made last night in Yankee Stadium as Aaron Judge hit his 60th home run for the season, a feat that has only been accomplished in Yankee history by Babe Ruth and Roger Maris. In what was Judge's 147th game last night, he becomes the fastest out of the 3 Yankees to reach 60 home runs in one season and is expected to surpass Roger Maris's 61 home runs. Judge is the 3rd fastest to reach 60 home runs in all of MLB history. Here was what New York looked like last night in the bottom of the 9th after Judge joined the 60 homer club.
3 infielders on the left side for Judge, and here's the 3-1. Drilled deep to left field. There it goes! Number 60! Slide over, babe. You've got some company.
And for the App State versus Troy game. Well, what a game it was. After a Hail Mary won it for the Mountaineers with just 2 seconds left. On 4th down, Chase Bryce threw the ball from their own 47-yard line toward the end zone and was tipped by the defense but caught by Christian Horn, who ran it in for a game-winning touchdown. App State students and fans rushed the field after a, quote, miracle on the mountain. And I personally am, again, super excited for this App State team to see what they're going to do as they go into conference play next week. Yeah,
100%. I told you last week.
You
I said
did.
App State, they know how to do it.
Coming up after the break, what Carolina sporting events are going on this week. Stay tuned for the Palmetto State calendar.
Before we go, let's take a look at the Palmetto State calendar. Starting off with some men's soccer, the Chanticleers head to Charlotte tonight to take on the 49ers at 7 p.m. And on Sunday, they will head to Greenville to take on Furman at 2 p.m. Continuing on the pitch, the Gamecocks men's soccer team will host Georgia Southern this Saturday at noon. And to wrap up the slate of men's soccer matches, the Clemson Tigers will look to bounce back as they host Wake Forest after suffering their first loss of the season to Syracuse just last Friday. Kickoff will be at 7 p.m.
Moving on to women's soccer matchups, the Gamecocks head to Athens tomorrow night to take on the Bulldogs at 7 p.m. Then they will return home this Sunday to host the 20th ranked Arkansas Razorbacks at 2 p.m. on SEC Network Plus. The Tiger women's soccer team heads to Winston-Salem to take on the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Later in the week, they will travel to Tallahassee to play the Florida State Seminoles this Sunday at 1 p.m. And for the Chanticleers women's soccer squad, take on the Mountaineers of App State in Boone tomorrow night at 6 p.m. After that, they'll head back to Conway to host Georgia State at noon on Sunday.
Moving on to the gridiron for this week's football matchups, the Chanticleers take on Georgia State in Atlanta tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN2. The Gamecocks host the Charlotte 49ers this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. and you can catch the action on ESPNU. And finally, the Clemson Tigers travel to Winston-Salem to face the Demon Deacons in a top 25 matchup at noon on ABC.
And finally, moving on to the volleyball matchups for the week, the Tigers host the Hokies this Friday at 7. Then 2 days later, they host Wake Forest at 1 p.m. The 12th-ranked Gators travel to Columbia to take on the Gamecocks at 2 p.m. The Chanticleers will host the Georgia State Panthers Friday at 6 p.m. and then again the next day at 1 p.m.
And that's all we have for tonight's edition of Palmetto State Sports.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at SGTV Sports, and to keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtvonline.com. For SGTV News 4 Sports, I'm Courtney Hollmon.
And I'm Spencer Ball. For all of us here at SGTV, have a great night, Carolina.
Forever to be.